And what is the River Jordan? That is the crossing over into the promised land. I called you up out of, I provided for you, I turned blessings into curses, and I brought you to where I said I was going to bring you. How have I wearied you? Do you get a sense of that? What a beautiful picture of God's faithfulness. And by the way, that you might know the righteous acts, the idea of righteous acts is actually a word that is often described like God's obligation covenantally. That's kind of what the idea is. God covenantally promises to do righteous acts. And that's what he's describing right here. Prosecution rests. Now, here's what happens in verse 6. Now, what happens in the beginning in verse 6 is it's different. It's not even a defense. If the first one has a bit of I think you get that sense, kind of a courtroom feeling, where God is both the prosecutor and the judge, that the next piece that you actually have here is what is known as entrance liturgy. I've often desired for us to be a little more liturgical than we are. I know that some people hate it. Some people absolutely love it, maybe even too much. Some people don't like it enough. But one of the things that they would do back then, and there's a couple of texts that you can even take a look at, Psalm 15, Psalm 24, statements like, "And who can ascend to the hill of the Lord? And who can be considered righteous in his presence?" It's kind of like you're asking the priest a question. And then the priest gives us, "He who has clean lips, he who loves the Lord your God with all his heart and soul and mind and strength." It's a question and a response, right? That's kind of what's happening here. And that's kind of what's happening in verses 6 through 8 of our text. Verses 6 through 8, it's like someone is speaking to a priest, and the priest would give some kind of response back. Verse 6, "With what shall I come before Yahweh and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old?" Now, see why it's important to understand? A burnt offering is which of the offerings? See, there are different offerings. Sometimes there was an offering, and the offering went like this. So bring in your calf, and you'll bring it before the priest, and the priest will divide it all up, and read Leviticus. It's like, here's how you cut a cow open, and here's how you remove the kidneys, and then you put this over here, and then you give the worshiper back this, and he can either take that home, and then the priest gets this, and you share that meal together, okay? So there really is a sense in which the offerings sometimes are, hey honey, I'm going down to offer up this offering before the Lord, and when I come back, steak for supper, babe. And then there are burnt offerings. The burnt offerings, write this down beside it, and then never forget this. Burnt offering means the whole thing. You get nothing back. You were allowed to offer a calf that was over 7 days old. By the way, the longer a calf stays with you, the greater worth it is to you, correct? And so they would talk about that of great worth in this culture was a calf of a year old. Of great worth and great value. So now, can I read it again so you kind of get a sense? "Shall I come before him with an offering that will be completely consumed and I really get nothing back? Because that's how great he is and that's how awesome he is. With a calf that's a year old because it's the best that I have and I would give it to him. Is that what you want me to do, God?" Verse 7, "Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams?" Now, by the way, when you hear about like thousands of rams, where do you go biblically speaking? Does anybody go anywhere? Solomon, dedication of the temple. Right? Where Solomon seems to, and most likely at the nation's expense, today we're going to be offering, and I meant to go back and look at the numbers, but I didn't, honestly. But I'm going to offer like thousands and thousands of animals to demonstrate just how good God is. This is like nobody else does this. There's a strong sense of exaggeration and hyperbole. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams and 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? So this is the accusation, or this is the kind of the liturgical as you're going up. Like, what does God want from me? Does he want everything from me? Is this what he wants? Does he want things that I cannot give? Which, by the way, that last statement, shall I give my firstborn for my transgression? I think you both, kind of get the illusion, but don't forget, like in Israel's history, what does God not want? Your children sacrificed on fire, okay? And most likely, just after the time of Micah, they're going to start doing this, but not to God, Yahweh, but to Moloch. Is that what you want? And now the priest responds. So I want you to look at verse 8 as the response to verse 6 and 7. And you really got to get a sense of God, what do you want from me? Do you want like everything from me? Which, by the way, how many of you go, yeah, that sounds about fair? After what God did, I mean, I want to seriously ask you this question. What could you give to God that you would go, yeah, that was a little too much? Just think about it for a moment. What could you give to him in terms of who he is and what and particularly in Micah 6 and what he has done? I brought you up out of, I blessed you in the midst of cursing. I brought you across the Jordan. That's the Shittim to Gilgal. What do you want from me? Like everything? You want everything from me? The response, kind of the priest back to the liturgist, to the congregant. He has told you, O man, that is just like Israel has some strong significance. O man is O Adam, Adam. Which then reminds us of like where we sit before God, doesn't it? Like it's not a bad thing, but it is a proper place, right? You have Yahweh God and you have Adam and Isha, woman. And who are we? Like in certain contexts, wow, look at what God has given to us. In other contexts, wow, look how big God is in comparison to us. He has told you, oh man, what is good. And what does Yahweh require of you? I love this. But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, by the way, Micah 6:8 is a verse you should memorize. And if your parents will let you, tattoo it anywhere you want. Write it on the doorposts of your house. I mean, what does God require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I have beside this a verse that means a lot to me. It's Hosea 12:6. Kind of a very similar concept. So a prophet to the northern tribes, Hosea, in the midst of Israel's unfaithfulness, covenant unfaithfulness to God, Hosea and Gomer. Hosea 12:6 says a similar thing. I got this and I've kind of reworded it in one of the resources that I was looking at. They gave me this quote, and again, I've reworded it, so I've removed the person's name. Israel offered everything to Yahweh God except what God asked for: their heart, their love, and their obedience. Like they're willing to, what do you want? Rivers of oil? I want you to walk humbly with me. What do you want? What do you want from me? I want you to seek justice. Notice how even that idea of seeking justice and loving kindness and then walking humbly draws us back into the covenant law that was given, in which we will what? Love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and I'll add Jesus' mind and strength. And then we love our neighbor as ourselves. Like that is the responsibility that we have. And Israel went, no, like I'll even give you the calf. I'll give you 1,000 calves. But I will not walk humbly. And by the way, what that is are men and women who still want God on their own terms. That's religion, as opposed to like what I would consider biblical Christianity. Biblical Christianity or biblical obedience to God is on His terms, not ours. What do you want, oh God? I love even the question, because that can be almost a reverse mocking agitation. What do you want? Or it can be an honest, what do you want? Because whatever it is, I will give it. Because I've done the math and you deserve it. I mean, I'm telling you, do the math and then answer me what God does not deserve from you. That's what Micah 6 is having you do. Because we're going to court. And God's going to go, how have I wearied you? How have I wronged you? How have I somehow not done exceedingly more? And how have you not failed me? And the last just kind of comes at us full force. The voice of the Lord cries to the city, and it is sound wisdom to fear your name. Hear of the rod and of him who appointed it. That's the judge. The rod is a sign of smacking. Can I forget any longer the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that is accursed? What are they describing there? Remember, do justice. What he is describing there are merchants, and this is a major no-no in the Bible, where the scales aren't right. Where, hey, I'll give you so much money for so much wheat. And the scales are basically so manipulated that the one who has gets more, and the one who does not have goes away with less. And God is ready to lose it on them for that. That's drawing back to verse 8. Do justice. Can I forget, listen to that, the treasures of wickedness that exist in the house of the wicked, because their scales are not just? Shall I acquit the man with wicked scales and with a bag of deceitful weights? Literally, like, am I just going to look the other way? Your rich men are full of violence, and your inhabitants speak lies, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. And so God is describing, again, the wickedness that exists. I love to remind, hopefully I begin with myself, but I love to be reminded of and to remind others that the ability to, in your mind, to separate how you treat others from your devotion to God is satanic. And by the way, that's an understatement. It's crazy how people seem that they can either take advantage of or whatever, however you want to talk about it. You see in the context here, and yet what? But God, what do you want from me? I'll give you all that you want. How about like justice and kindness and walk humbly? Well, no, that. Okay. So now that we're back in the courtroom, I'm going to now demand the exact payment. You want to talk about how you're acting? Okay, because I'm going to use the law as the measuring stick. Make peace before you end up in the courthouse. Therefore, I will strike you with a grievous blow. I will make you desolate because of your sins. You shall eat. And by the way, I wrote beside this two ideas that can come from this. And I'll come back. I will, give a little bit of a word of caution. I want to give you 2 words of caution. Caution number 1. Be careful doing what I'm about to tell you to do. Caution number 2. Be careful not doing what I'm about to tell you to do. Okay? Be careful doing it, but be careful that you don't do it. One of the phrases that I could use, although it's not found here, but it's found in the Psalms, is something that is known as imprecatory. The imprecatory Psalms, where particularly David, but others as well, would pray for and sing out like God's judgment to be brought upon wicked people. without and hear me, this is why I say be careful. I'm going to start over here. This is such a foreign concept for us today because we misapply words of Jesus like, well, we should turn the other cheek, and that we should go the second mile, and we should pray for our enemies. By the way, I totally agree. I mean, I'm going to argue with Jesus. Okay? So we shouldn't pray those things. Well, no, but the Bible does. Yeah. And then this is where you get into trouble. You either have to say the Bible was wrong. The book of Revelation is full of it. Full of imprecatory lament or imprecatory song against the enemies of God and God's judgment upon them. So we are very cautious about this. We just almost think it's presumptuous and it's rude. It's inappropriate. I would argue, no, it's actually biblical. Where we get into trouble is when we don't do it. So as we move in this direction, this is the danger. So let's move into the other danger. The other danger is, man, I kind of like this. And you know what? I think I might just hit him with my own car. No, an imprecatory psalm is to pray for God's judgment to come. Like Paul says, don't seek vengeance. Vengeance is whose? God's. I would even argue that we would do a better job dealing with evil in the world if we truly prayed an imprecatory, a biblically deduced, biblically informed, imprecatory prayer against the enemy, against enemies. We could actually do that well when we have the heart of Jesus. And I would even argue that to truly leave it in the Lord's hand, people like this that don't want to have anything to do with it, they're usually the ones that are this close to just exploding. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're the appendix that at any moment they're just going to explode and kill us all. Like there's a volatility that exists by living in a certain sense of spiritual denial to the enemy that is around us. It just kind of holds it in and pents it up. The Bible does teach that our anger does not bring about the righteousness of God. The Bible teaches me that I need to leave room for God's judgment and God's wrath. Jesus says to pray for my enemies and to turn the other cheek. I need to do that. And I need to genuinely seek for God to do His will. His will. And I actually can handle the frustrations. How many of you are frustrated with evil in the world? How many of you turn that into like some self-destructive tendencies? Any of you guys like complain? Right? Like not to God, but just you're a complainer about it. Like that's not biblical. And I've really read the book of Revelation, fundamentally changed my mind on this, and then my study of the Psalms, where I thought, okay, like who can I talk to about this? Oh, I can always talk to Him. And I can always leave it in His hands. And I have gone to God with my greatest pains, my greatest frustrations, the anger that is about to undo me or to have me do some things that are going to have some consequence, right? And I give it to Him. My own testimony, I kind of walk away and go, well, I gave it to Him and He'll do what's right. He'll do what's right. Now, by the way, when I don't give it to Him and I just come back, that's when we're in danger again. This is how we do it here. These are known as futility curses. You can write that down. I think it's kind of a neat name. They're futility curses. Listen to how they say it. You will eat, but you will not be satisfied. Do you see the futility? You will eat, but not be satisfied. There will be hunger within you, and you will put away, but you will never preserve. And what you preserve, I will give to the sword. You will sow, and you won't reap. You will tread olives, but not anoint yourselves with oil. You shall tread grapes, but not drink wine. That's God's judgment. And by the way, I really think so much of God's judgment when it comes upon those who are rebellious, those who are guilty and refuse to reconcile before court date, and so now they're kind of dragged into it. some people have even described like hell as this. You know, even Uri's definition, if you remember him a few weeks ago, is this concept. But truly, there is something that is really tormenting in regards to this futility. And God says that's what it's going to be like. You're going to save up and then not have anything. You're going to eat and you're never satisfied. Why? Because you have rebelled against me. Last verse. For you have kept, and this is why you got to know your history again, right? There's a lot of history in this text, isn't there? For you have kept the statutes of Omri and all the works of the house of Ahab, and you have walked in their counsels, that I may make you a desolation and your inhabitants a hissing, which is the sound that they would make like boo. Okay, it's not like a snake. It's a bit of that mocking. They use this same kind of word when inhabitants are being dragged out after being after a conquest, and you have exiles that are leaving. That's the hissing. So you shall bear the scorn of my people. You've kept the statutes of Omri. Who's Omri and Ahab, by the way? First of all, they're kings. One of them you should know, right? Here or here? Do you get the slam? These aren't even David's descendants. Oh, no, you guys have been really, really faithful to Ahab and Omri. Two guys who are known for the accusations about, remember Ahab stealing the vineyard? And Omri was a thief as well? He's the one that's accused of stealing the kingdom. Is that you, Omri? Came to steal the kingdom? Yep, that's you. And this is why it's really, really valuable, because they are in the process of going through, and I've already gone through. If the writing of Micah is around 701, this fell in 722. So literally like just 20 years before, the house of Omri and the house of Ahab fell. And that's who you're modeling yourself after? Oh, okay, good choice. And that's who you wanna? Okay, well, I'm gonna deal with you like them. It's like me saying to you, oh house of Lenin, oh house of Stalin, Brezhnev, Andropov, and Gorbachev. How many of you go, well, don't label me as them. They didn't make it. Yeah. Because why? Because the Lord has been nothing but good, and Israel has been nothing but bad. So the final thought, it's why it's good for us to go back. Just try to think through. I mean, the good news is, if I'm not obedient, I won't say careful, but Jesus, by the way, sometimes says, he uses this word in Mark chapter 4, be very careful about how you hear my words. He says that to the people. Be careful how you, he said, I taught my boys this when they were little. Jesus says, be careful how you listen. Be careful how you listen. I don't know when the date is really for the hearing, but it'll go something like this. How have I wearied you? Like, how have I been nothing but... And then the story that he'll tell me is not about coming up out of Egypt, but I sent my son who died for you. How have I not given you life? How have I not given you the Spirit? How have I not? And yet, what have you done? What do you want from me? You want me to go into ministry for you? You want me to move away from you, or like from my homeland to another place? I mean, you want everything from me? You know what I want? Like I want you to seek justice. I want you to be lovingly kind, and I want you to walk humbly before me. And then the accusations come. court adjourned. And I don't want that Micah 6 to happen to me, do you? So can I give you just a real brief alternative? Court is in session. And the Lord begins to speak. And I'm not even saying he would even let me do this, but excuse me, Creator God of the universe, if I could just say something first. And he already knows what I'm going to say. I'm just here to say thank you to Jesus for all that you've done for me. See the difference? Which, by the way, is walking humbly. Micah 6. When we come back, we will finish the book. I love Micah 7. It's one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. I am looking forward to seeing you Sunday. Look at that. Looks like almost everybody gets a bag. You want to come back or steal one now, but then Drew Henderson will chase you down. That's all I have. Love you guys. We will see you Sunday.